institution. And then it's addressing healthcare HSMEs, so the healthcare small and medium enterprises as opposed to the larger ones, because that's the first point where people engage. So AMEF is a program to increase access and availability of medical equipment and associated services in 9 countries in East and West Africa. Currently, we are operational in Kenya and Cote d'Ivoire. And that is providing that financial solution, because we know that financial institutions have for a long time not been able to trust healthcare institutions, and we're trying to demystify that, to allow local partner banks to lend to private healthcare SMEs and facilitate access to up to 300 million US dollars of loans and leases. And right now, our partner bank in Kenya is Co-op, which we are very, very proud to be associated with. And then it's a partnership with financial institutions and OEMs to be able to facilitate in strengthening HSMEs, healthcare medium, small, medium enterprises, to be able to thrive and actually serve in the commitment they have done in terms of providing care in the localities that they serve. Next slide. Next slide, and before I go on, if Dr. Tim Deori could say a welcoming comment, that would be wonderful as our host.
Thank you, Faith, Baz, and team. Mine is just to karibisha everyone. Welcome so much. It's always a pleasure that when we call for these meetings, we have everyone respond and come in. I'm taking this from out of station, so a bit noisy where I am. Good to see you, Joe, as well. I think what you say is very important, and also in the landscape that we are in. Health tends to be a liquidity business, as we all know, and cash flow is king in this sector. When capital is poured into the sector, two things we look at is a tenure. How long is this money being advanced to you? And the second thing is what is the cost of credit? What is the cost of this money that is being given to you? And these resources come in the way of money, comes in the way of equipment, could come in the way of health labor placement, but it comes at a cost. What Faith, Joe, and Baz are telling us here is, look, we understand these factors. We are thinking through this, and we want, when the solution we give you comes into your facility, into the market, it behaves in a manner that enables your business, in a manner that helps sustain the work that you do. It is not lost on us that we are moving in a transition period from NHIF to the Social Health Authority. And during any transition, businessmen tend, or rather the market tends to hold off a little so that it can ascertain what are the known factors and what remains unknown, and what shall remain forever unknown. So that's the season we find ourselves in, and I think we all agree that the market is behaving in this manner, and it is also an interesting time for people in the business of healthcare. That being said, let's take advantage of what is being given to us here in terms of, one, knowledge, two, in terms of the financing solution that we have here. And as KHF, what we are saying is we are willing to learn with all of you in this process, so that we are able to iterate where we can to ensure that there's maximum benefit to the business, but most importantly, to achieve one of the biggest things we endeavored to do when we all began, and that is to ensure that healthcare is not only affordable, but available. You can easily end up with affordable healthcare that is not available. We want to hit those two targets. Faith, I will hand over to you. This is it's a technical session. I will request that you allow
me. And I know you're in
to...
Zambia, so thank you for even taking the time.
Yeah.
No,
yeah. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so my team
Asante.
is on tour to assist in whatever way, and Liz has done a fantastic job in this. So thank you so
Yeah.
much, and Godspeed in the conversations today. And good to see you,
Asante.
Joe and Baz. Yeah,
Asante. And
thank
it's
you.
really wonderful to just see. I got a welcoming from Pakistan, so thank you. And then I see Anthony Mamati from Mindray there, so
Mm.
it's good to see a lot of people that we know there. As we move along with the conversation, it's just to say, who do we do, what do we do, and then my colleague and Joseph will just delve into some more about strategic the strategy of what we are trying to do in terms of strengthening healthcare systems in Africa, so to speak. So we as advisory offer trainings. And we offer trainings to the banks that we're working with. We offer trainings to the HSMEs, to the healthcare institutions that we're working with, in terms of strengthening quality and then strengthening how to assess healthcare institutions for their viability to take on loans, to be able to equip themselves with equipment and so on and so forth. Right now, as I said, we are partnered with Co-op Bank in Kenya, NCA and BICC in Cote d'Ivoire. So we're very proud of that, and that's growing, and that's something, a portfolio that we're trying to grow. And with those, we link ourselves to HSMEs to be say, how are you bankable, how do we make you bankable. We also have financial advisory in our docket to actually help healthcare institutions present themselves to financial institutions as viable industries, to be invested in, and to so that they can support them in their growth, so to speak. The next thing is our OEMs. We are very intentional about who we work with, because we want to link our HSMEs, banks, with industries that are viable and sort of trustworthy, so to speak, who follow our clients, and support our clients in the journey and not just the transaction. So right now we have GE, Philips, Carl Stores, Electa, Getinge, OneFor, Mindray, Biomirio, and Newsoft in our portfolio. That's also growing, but once again, we're very intentional about who we associate with and who we associate our clients with, to ensure that the transition is seamless, and the relationship is also seamless, in terms of it's not about just buying an equipment, it's about the longevity of that equipment and the people that we're serving. And that's actually where we are. It's the people and the impact that we're trying to serve. And so it's that we procure, or they procure, but then do they have a relationship with these organizations to be able to make sure that this transaction is not just one off, it's actually uh, a relationship. We support them in human resource training and so on and so forth, making sure the equipment is maintained and so on. Things that are not really thought about usually when we're purchasing equipment, and that's the conversation we're going to go into, and so on. Next slide. Okay, so who can benefit from RMF? IFC deals with private institutions, clinics, laboratories, imaging centers, operating, and so on and so forth. Registered, you have to be registered and licensed, and so on. And then meeting a subset of criteria, we'll go into that. And then what are the key terms? Loan amounts of 500,000 shillings. So we're talking point of care type of equipment to larger equipment, MRIs and so on, and CTs and so on, to 200 million. type. Tenor is up to 5 years, grace period 3 to 6 months moratorium, and then use of funds, purchase of medical equipment, ancillary services, delivery, installation, and warranty from RMF partner OEM or its duty and authorized distributors. In Kenya, we can say we have Mindray there, but an authorized distributor is Crown, which is very well known, and so on. So we're working with the OEM, with their selected distributors as well, and we're collaborating very, very well. Next slide. It's the advisory services. Okay. We've talked about the advisory services. We have 3 components. One is onboarding, training, and implementation of financial institutions, which we had said in Kenya, cooperative is our main institution. We're looking to expand on that, but cooperative is our main institution right now, and we've been doing an incredible job with that. Component 2 is where myself and my colleagues come in. That's Joseph, who will be talking on the line and in a few minutes, and Madenge, from a quality perspective, from a technical perspective, and from a financial perspective. And then the third is financial management and business planning toolkit. Omar is not here, but then we have our Omar, our sort of our financial sort of support system, so that we're trying to build all those components to make sure technicality, from technical, quality, and finance institutions are supported. And then the bank also understands how to assess the institutions, and that's why we're coming in as advisory. Next slide. And if Bas and Joseph, if you want to chime in, please come through as we go on to the next slide, so we can move on to Joseph's slides.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you very much for that prequel to this. And I think that this is the foundation of what we're going to discuss here. I'm going to share my screen. Martin, can you let me know if everything is good once I share it?
Please proceed.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, for the future.
Okay, perfect.
Go full screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So let's get started. One of the things that Faith said is that we as the IFC are looking at providing, actually it was Boz that said, is providing a complete solution to when it comes to procuring medical technology and medical instruments. One of the things we know for sure, whether we're in Kenya, Nigeria, Bangladesh, and I'm shouting out to all my people that are on the call today, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nigeria. I feel like we're at the Olympics all over again, only we're not competing. So one of the things that we know is that we cannot do healthcare without medical equipment. It just doesn't work. In fact, healthcare is probably the most technology-ridden industry that there is. It cannot operate without technology. It's okay for us to get the proper financing, but how do we strategically plan to use that financing to procure medical equipment that's going to be pertinent to our practices and pertinent to our facilities? My father used to always say, do not make sure you're not always reacting. Make sure you're always responding. There's a difference between reaction and response, right? And what we in Africa and developing markets like the Middle East have always done when it comes to medical equipment is we have reacted. The market says something, we're like, oh my gosh, we have to go out and get the newest. and the newest that. We don't respond. In other words, we don't look at the market and say, what's the market trend for the next 5 years? Where will healthcare be in the next 5 years? We don't do that. We just respond. So one of the things we're going to be going through today is planning for the future. How do we do that when it comes to medical equipment? And I'm not going to go over this slide because I think Faith and Boss have already done it justice. What we want to do with AMIF is bring together an ecosystem where the facilities can go for financing, go for medical equipment, and go for implementation support when they actually get that medical equipment from IFC advisement. Excuse me. Let's move on. So here we go.
And I think Joseph, you said a very good point in terms of response, because COVID was IFC RMF was a response to COVID, and whereas we should have been prepared as healthcare organizations, we should have been prepared and so on, and not trying to run in for solutions, because those solutions should have been within our institutions. It's like having a what we call it, Joseph, what are those rooms? The rooms with the I haven't been in the hospital for a while. The negative rooms and so on and so forth.
Oh yes,
right?
the isolation rooms.
Isolation rooms and so on and so forth, where if we know a person who's coming in with something that is communicable, we isolate and we have protocols to address that. But it seemed that when COVID came, we were just not ready. And it's not that Kenya was not ready, the world was not ready. And this became a sort of a addressing moment to that, to say, okay, we need to be ready. It's like having an A&E department, but an A&E department for communicable diseases. And we weren't ready for that. And so we're trying to prepare ourselves for that, so that it's not, somebody comes in with TB, go here, quick. If somebody comes in with COVID, go here, and so on and so forth. And do you have the right ventilation and so on and so forth? So it's getting systems ready. And that's what this discussion is about, actually.
100%.
Go on.
100%. And when you talk about getting ready, I mean, we have hospitals that are on the call right now. I think we have representatives from Northwest Hospital Alliance in Pakistan, and they were one of the most ready COVID hospitals I've ever seen in my life. They had instituted things where patients were given iPads to communicate with the people in isolation, just things that, like, they thought about things ahead. So if we're going to have a program like AMF, that's going to put us in touch with financing, so half that problem is done. The next problem is, what is the strategic plan for the procurement of medical equipment? How do you think about medical equipment? Are you the kind of doctor or CEO or procurement specialist that says, hey, there's something out there, let me go get it, instead of sitting back with your team and trying to figure out, in the next 5 years, will I actually need this piece of equipment? In the next 5 years, am I going to have this equipment and it's going to pertain to a certain type of patient? So there's 4 key points that I want to go through real quickly. Number one, what are the challenges in medical equipment? I asked that in the chat, and Faith, I'll leave that to you. If you see any response in the chat, if you can stop me and read that, because I can't see it at the same time. What challenges have you seen in the procurement of proper medical equipment in your facility, in your region, in your country? Number 2, is strategic planning important? Is it important to strategic plan? We have impulse buying. We hate to go out and impulse buy. I know people that go out and impulse buy cars. They see a car, they just buy it. They don't think, can I actually use this car? Number 3, what are the key considerations for procurement strategies? If you have a procurement department or someone that's in charge of procurement within your facility of medical equipment and technology, are there considerations that this person or persons must go through before they decide to make a purchase? And number 4, what are the strategic trends that we need to adopt to ensure that our healthcare facilities are future ready? Okay.
So there's Two things that have come up.
Mhm.
Leon, I believe Leon is from Co-op Bank. He says quarantines.
Mm,
Yeah, number one. Yeah, we didn't talk about quarantines 5 years ago. Yes,
right.
quarantines became an issue. And then we have lack of knowledge about equipment specialties and product knowledge. And that's a very, very good point, because in terms of when we go to these lavish conferences and so on, they push things to us, um, but we lack the knowledge about what the equipment does, what the product is about, and then what the training of a human resource has to be done to be able to make sure this works within our facilities. And then
Mm.
somebody asked, which hospital in Pakistan, may you please mention the name? Yeah, so those are the three things that have come up.
It was Northwest Alliance Hospital in Pakistan. I can say it very proudly because I've been there 3 or 4 times, and they are phenomenal. So, Faith, one of the things that you were saying, and Leon had mentioned, was the isolation and things like that. One of the things that we're going to be talking about is how do you buy equipment to make sure that it fits within your ecosystem, right? Look, I am an Apple phone user. I will probably use Apple phones all my life. But one of the things I figured out really quickly is that I had to have an ecosystem in my house for that phone to deliver 100% of its capacity. So my TV then became Apple, right? Apple Play in my car, and so on and so forth. Everything had to be in its ecosystem, right? So let's move on. What are the key challenges that you've seen in Kenya, in Africa, in the rest of the world when it comes to procuring medical equipment? And there's a bunch of them. I'm just going to highlight a couple, all right? One of the main challenges that we have in developing markets, including Africa, including the Middle East, is that most of our equipment comes from another country, right? Most of our equipment are made in another country. Interesting article by National Institute of Health in the United States. Do you know that Africa imports 90% of medical technology from the US and Europe into Africa? So what happens, let's deal with this challenge. What happens when that importing, something happens to it? The ports shut down. During COVID, nothing can come in and out. What happens when, so I'll give you an example. One of the disposables that I use in my day-to-day practice is hydrogen peroxide that's vaporized to clean ultrasound probes that are intercavitary probes, right? We cannot fly hydrogen peroxide by plane. It explodes if you get it above a certain altitude. So it has to be trucked in. That basically constricts how things move in and out. Is it coming in by trucks? What's going on? So the supply chains disruption. When you think about procuring medical equipment, do you think if I have to replace a part of that equipment, where is the part coming from? Is it coming from Germany, the US, the Middle East? And how is it going to get to me? And what happens if there's a supply chain disruption overseas? Is my equipment now going to sit there unused and I'm going to be losing ROI? So first, we import too many things, right? We don't have enough people and personnel and companies that actually produce in Africa, but that's okay. Second, we have global supply chain disruptions that will actually take us out of practice. And third, and I think that Faith just mentioned this, we have a lack of technical expertise in developing markets when it comes to running advanced equipment. So those are some of the challenges that we're dealing with. And I want you to start looking at these challenges as something that you're investigating when it comes to purchasing medical equipment, right? Regulatory barriers.
We have Renee Lupalo online, who works for biomedical engineering, the society, who will actually address what you're saying, because that's a huge area. There's two, yeah, he's back online. There's two things that Joseph, I want you to take on. Number one is there's the challenge of a medical field where technology is changing so fast. Nice one. That equipment purchase are outdated in a matter of few years. What are the initiatives of facing this challenge? So that's a really good question, and I think Joseph is good on that one. And then, yeah,
I'm
you're
primed for
right on
that
that
one.
one. And then the next one is thank you for preparing this important strategy on these ignored areas. Medical equipment is the backbone of healthcare services. I say human resources first, then medical equipment, and highly needed attention to improve access and availability of medical equipment. This strategy is important for LMIC to equip health facilities, especially in financial constraints, correct, to procure high capital equipment. However, I want to ask some questions. Go ahead. Why only implement this strategy in only 2 countries? Okay.
Has to start.
Good question. Wait. In 2 countries, what are the criteria to provide loan arrangements and selection of health facilities? Is the loan arrangement only for the procurement of the equipment, or does it include the lifespan of the equipment, running cost, and professional development? Leon, you're on the line from Co-op, so you'll answer that. Is the AMF support procurement as well as management and implementation of services?
Yes.
That's
I would
huge.
love for Leon to answer that on text, to answer the part that deals with the finances on text. I would say that some of your questions that were just asked are going to be answered before this lecture is over. And I would go backward one, Faith, to say that the question you asked before was about technological, how some of the equipment you buy is outdated by the time you actually install it in your hospital. We will answer that also. I think you asked a question, Faith, also. The person that you were reading said, what are the things in place to prevent this from happening? I'm going to be very honest with you. The things in place to prevent this from happening is your planning. Basically, it's your planning. If you're going out and looking at medical equipment and buying a phone, you already know by the time you get the phone home, it's going to be outdated, right? So it's up to you to do the research and to pull the research to know what fits in your hospital and what's still going to be utilized in 5, 10, 15 years. The life expectancy of an ultrasound machine is 5 to 7 years. Right? And I'm just using that as an example. So if you go out and buy a 3-year-old ultrasound machine, you already know you only have 2 years before it's going to be outdated, right? We'll get into that. One of the challenges that we deal with in most countries is regulation barriers. And I'm highlighting that because those are some of the things that are very hard to overcome. Whether you're going to buy things in country, out of country, how do you get them through customs, things like that. So there's really not much on the ground that you can do about that because you have a plethora, especially in AMF, we have a plethora of manufacturers, original and distributor, that can actually help you walk through these kinds of barriers. Number 2, reactive planning. That is a huge one. Why do we reactive plan? Right? We see something, we go out, we buy it, we get it to our hospitals and really figure out that the return on investment is not as great as we thought it was. Reactive planning. We need to proactive plan. Proactive planning enables the facilities or the healthcare organizations to prepare for the future, prioritize their resources, make challenging decisions, align resources with goals. What is the goal of your facility? If you're a radiology department, what are you doing? Are you doing CAT scans? Are you doing MRIs? What are you measuring? Where does your mission statement lie? Where does it stop? What's your goal? Okay.
So something that just came up is Akubo Belton just said some of the challenges are impromptu buying, not occasioned by needs.
Yes.
Huge point.
Yes.
Huge point.
I tell everybody this story, and my partner is giving me permission to repeat the story. I was in Cairo on business once, and my partner said, I'm going to buy a refrigerator. And I said, fine, go buy the refrigerator. And Faith remembers. And I get an image of the refrigerator that she's just bought, but it can't fit through the door because no one had thought, let's measure this thing before we buy. You see, reactive versus proactive planning, right? And then one of the other things is, and this is huge, we do not have good benchmarking practices when it comes to medical procurement and how our facilities are going to integrate that medical technology into our system. Navigating complex regulatory requirements, compliance standards can impede procurement process, leading to delays in acquiring necessary medical equipment. What is your benchmarking process? How do you benchmark in your facility? Do you have a benchmarking process in your facility? Right? And then one of the most important ones, and Faith and I are both on the quality healthcare team of the International Finance Corporation, we have deficient quality measurement standards. You buy a piece of X-ray machine. What is your measurement standard for quality? How do you measure the amount of X-ray that a child is exposed to per year? Where is that written down? Where can I pull those numbers? How do I quality assure that equipment? My physicist, where is he coming from? We have a bioengineer on the call right now. How often are you involving these people in the decisions that you make to procure equipment? Defective and deficient quality measurement standards. Luckily, we at the IFC in our consulting advisory services can help you with this. Okay, so those are some of the challenges that we look at when we're procuring medical equipment. What I want to ask you, and you don't have to answer me, I don't want to embarrass you, how many people actually think about these before they put down the order and write out the check to buy from GE, Philips, Carl Starks, whoever you're buying from? How many people actually go through these things to make sure that these things are settled and, so, as we say in South Africa, sorted before you buy them?
So number one is that Leon from Cooperative Bank has put his contacts there. Please take them for further engagement, because we are linked with Co-op Bank and we really want to make sure that we are a solution to the needs. But adding to my colleagues' points are, what is your strategy? Do you have a strategy? And when we are building healthcare institutions, I built one from ground up where it was a bed sitter, and we built it into a 16-bed healthcare maternity facility. Is that what were you thinking of? And to be really honest, I've told Joseph this for a very long time. I didn't know what I was doing. I went to Kijabe Street. I went to town. We bought resuscitators and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, I purchased from the wrong vendors. And so when the equipment went out, it went out. And so we're talking about return on investment. Guess what? I was at a loss because I bought wrong equipment from the wrong person, because they were not supportive on my journey. They were supportive on that transaction. And these are the things that we are trying to mitigate in terms of, are you thinking ahead? Are you planning on who you're marrying? And how they will benefit you on your marriage? I'm not going to go on marriage right now, Joe, but no. But
yeah. No,
are these people going to support you in your relationship,
right,
so that you are able to provide services and get return on investment and actually benefit your institution to thrive? Over
100%,
to you.
100%. And in fact, this sets you up perfectly for purchasing medical equipment. Any of those long-term plans that you're talking about doing, have you gone through these 4 steps? And IFC, as our advisement group, will help you go through these. But let's talk about this. What's your planning and improvement framework look like before you decide to buy a piece of medical equipment? I don't care if it's actually a stethoscope or a 128 slice CT, anything. What does your planning improvement look like? Will the purchase of this piece of equipment allow your facility to carry out the activities, objectives that you have pre-planned? Well, here's the problem. You haven't pre-planned any. You haven't pre-planned any. You are buying a piece of X-ray or a centrifuge, and you have not sat down and thought, how many patients do I actually do on this thing? Am I going to do more patients? What type of patients am I going to be doing? Number 2, Equipment and marketing identification. Will the equipment assist in identifying new opportunities for your facilities? We in emerging markets do not like growth for some reason. Everybody wants to grow, but nobody wants to do the work and the thought process that goes into growing. If you're looking at your region, if I'm in Pakistan, if I'm in Bangladesh, and I say, oh, Bangladesh has a pregnant population, the first thing I would be thinking is, how can I capitalize on that population? What pieces of equipment do I have to buy to make sure I capture that patient population, right? Number three, branding. You say, oh, Joe, no. That's marketing. I'm in medicine. I don't want to deal anything with branding. That's just marketing. Well, guess what, guys? We're in the situation right now where business and medicine have married each other and we cannot get them apart. If you're running a business that is, if you're running a medical practice that is not a business, you're going to go out of business really quickly. So is the purchase you're planning strengthen the facility's branding position? What is your branding position? Do you even have one? Right? Have you contacted somebody that is a specialist in marketing and say, hey guys, I'm running a diagnostic center here. How do I get it from 20 patients to 2,000 patients in the next XY years? What is my marketing strategy? And how does that equipment fit into the marketing strategy? And the last thing I speak about, and Faith and I speak about this a lot when it comes to quality, do you have a vision and a mission for your facility? Because guess what? If you do, you'll automatically know what equipment will fit into that facility. If your vision in an eye clinic is to be the best eye clinic in Kenya, the best eye clinic in Pakistan, the best eye clinic in Bangladesh, then you already know you're going to sit down with your manufacturers and pick out the best pieces of equipment. Planning and improvement, equipment marketing, branding, position, vision, and mission. Do you have that? Do you plan for that when you're purchasing equipment?
So there's three comments. Akubo has said, still on challenges. Procurement of high-tech medical equipment without having the right expertise to man the medical equipment. I'm going to Joseph's point on planning, right? You don't buy equipment if you don't have the people to operate it, or if you haven't planned to that. So when you're designing your human resource sort of base, what are your thoughts around? It's not we go to a conference and wow, that's good, but I don't even have people within my radius to operate it or the skill. And then what does that skill set cost you based on what's happening in your surrounding? So Akubo, I would love you to actually answer that on the chat. Anthony, our friend, Mamati, another challenge is related to the procurement law, which stipulated along the lines of the lowest price is considered, which sometimes ends up affecting quality of equipment. Okay, the price of equipment and quality of equipment are not in mutually exclusive. Anthony, I'm going to tell you to get off mute and actually talk about that. That would be a good point to address. And then another one is Alemu, hashtag additional challenges. Government and stakeholders only focuses on access/procurement of equipment after procured, not allocated budget for maintenance and services. Is that a government issue or is that an institutional issue? And this goes to your strategic plan and how you're looking at your business. That has nothing to do with government unless you're a government entity. Continuous professional development, skill-based, spare parts, well-equipped maintenance workshop follow-up. Is that a government issue? Is that an institutional issue? And I beg to differ because I run a private institution. And if I want to be the best, I invest in the best.
Yes.
And I'll put that there. That was to Alemu. Leon, you put contingencies on the loan and financing. I hope everybody has gone into the chat and seen that. He gave some more nuts and bolts on the loaning and so on and so forth, and his contacts are there. And then Asanka, this all come under healthcare technology management and better to embed into local education system under CPD protocol. Okay. Joseph, over to you.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's interesting that Faith, you just said you just read from two people that I'm like, guys, you need to stop telling the government they need to think for you. You need to think for yourself. There is government funding, there is VC capital funding, there are blended financing. There's all these financing tools that are available to us, but it means nothing if we're buying the wrong thing. They're never going to tell you what to buy. Right? They're going to okay you and approve you. Look, I can go right now to my mortgage provider, my bond provider, and I can say, I want to buy a house that's X amount of dollars. They'll say, well, let me see your credit. Let me see this. I go buy the house. They're never going to tell me what kind of house to buy. They're not going to tell me that buying a 10-bedroom house, I'm going to spend so much money heating and air cooling that house. I'm going to have to do my own research. I'm going to have to look at the market, what's popular in the market, which leads me to this. One of the problems I see in emerging markets as I travel from place to place is no one studies the market when they're buying medical equipment. You know what they want to know? They want to know, how can this equipment fit in my practice and do my patients? So are you always going to have those kind of patients? Faith tells this story of setting up an OBGYN center in a country or in a geographical area where the average age of the population is 50. How does that make sense? How does that make sense? And then you look surprised when you can't pay the bank back because you're not getting the patients. How many 50-year-old patients do you know that are having babies? Now, look, I'm in infertility, and every once in a while we get one, but it is not the norm, right? So you have to look at the surrounding areas. You have to look at the market. Number one, do you have a strategic planning and investment plan for the equipment that you're buying, right? This is an investment, right? Is there a strategic plan? I'm buying a 3D ultrasound machine. Well, why am I buying a 3D ultrasound when I look around in my generic area and all my patients are geriatric patients with phlebitis and vascular issues? You're wasting your time and you're wasting your money. You should be looking into, how can I grow that geriatric population to satisfy my business? We as medical people, they did not teach us business. When I went to school and got my medical degree, nowhere in it did they teach me business planning. Did they teach me management? Nowhere. I learned that as I went and I tried and I failed. And guess what I learned over the years? I learned to fail well. I learned to fail well. Once I failed, I said, let me do this again and see if I can fail some more, because you have to get up and keep going, right? So is there strategic planning and investment? Number two, what are you looking at when it comes to enhanced patient care and outcomes? Is the equipment that you're buying allowing you to take care of your patients better? I know in Africa, I'll give you an example. I'm in GYN, right? I know in Africa, Africa has the largest population of women with myomas, with fibroids in the world, right? And some of the GYNs in Africa have caught on to the fact that they are treating fibroids by utilizing medical equipment. That is enhanced patient care and outcome. Do you have the insight from marketing projections, right, to actually build your business when you order medical equipment? And lastly, how are you competing with the market? How are you competing? Listen, I didn't say compete with each other. I said, how are you competing with the market? By proactively evaluating marketing trends, your facility can position itself as a leader in adopting innovative healthcare solutions. And all of that solution comes from medical technology.
So we have Renee Lupalo from biomedical engineer with a passion for leadership, managed equipment services, expert, and so on. Renee, are you on the line?
I see him.
I thought I did.
I do see.
We just want to get some of his insights from a biomedical engineering perspective, because you are who we rely on. As we are purchasing, but then as we are maintaining equipment. Renee, are you there?
I do see.
Okay.
I do see. There he is.
No? Yeah?
You know, here he is. You're on mute, Renee. There
Hello.
you go. Hello.
Renee?
Hi, hello. Good evening according to my time estimates. Sorry about that. Rennie is my name. I'm a biomedical engineer by profession, with over a decade plus of experience and expertise, from a field service engineer to a product specialist, needs assessment, contract negotiations, procurement implementation, and above all, leadership in the whole spectrum of the medical field. Thanks for hosting me as a panelist. I'll go straight into the subject matter from a biomedical point of view, if you allow me, and then you're free to interject with questions. And if you like, I will share my screen if it's possible. You can see it?
No. We can see you.
You can see? Okay, just a moment.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Yes. So from a biomedical perspective, thank you, Joe, for outlining quite a very broad spectrum of what happens. And as a biomedical engineer, it is more often than not, especially from a hospital setup, whereby one is just asked to produce specification for a particular kind of equipment that they would like to buy. Some of them you may find the clinician maybe went for a symposium or somewhere and was able to was able to be impressed by a particular presentation, and let's say the CEO, and comes down and tells the team, I think we need this brand, we need this equipment, and everybody works towards it. When that happens, you actually exclude a number of stakeholders who are very important in the process. Like, for example, involving the clinicians themselves, the nurses, the administrative staff, civil engineers, architects, and IT personnel in the planning process. Having said that, you can actually see, sorry about that, starting from the needs assessment as one of the fundamental factors why you'd want to buy equipment. You conduct thorough assessment with healthcare providers to determine the types and quantities of equipment required. For example, let me use the MRI. We have a permanent magnet and a semi-conducting magnet. And which one fits the bill? Like, for example, if it's a permanent magnet, what kind of procedures are you doing and what kind of infrastructure do you have? If a superconductor, again, the same question arises. This will inform a better knowledge on who as a brand or as a player you can use versus just saying we want like this other hospital because they have the latest. That's what we normally say. Then when we come to the clinical workflow of work, understand and incorporate clinical workflow to ensure equipment placement enhances operational efficiency. Clinical workflow typically consists of 5 crucial steps: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and completion. For example, in the diagnostic center that has a laboratory and has a laboratory and imaging equipment far apart in the same institution ends up disrupting clinical workflow. If I needed to be done, let's say a CT scan and also a laboratory test, if they are 1 kilometer apart in the same institution, you realize as a patient, for one service, I may walk 2 to 3 kilometers before I'm actually assisted or even amalgamating the information. In the operating theater, you'll realize the patient from operating theater most likely is a candidate for the ICU. So if you have them far apart, again, you have the logistical nightmare and clinical challenges in terms of transferring them. So as a biomedical engineer, in terms of redesign, you need to involve all these kind of people in order to see what value you bring on the table or what equipment suits this kind of items. When you come to budget constraints, often people just say this one costs this much. But in terms of budget constraints, does it suit us? Develop a detailed budget includes initial costs, maintenance, and potential upgrades. Like, for example, beyond liking an equipment, you say maybe this brand is good, it has been reliable here. How many factor in the running costs for maintenance? You'll find that when the equipment is due for maintenance is when you're trying to raise funds in order to either repair or service it. But if you include this from the onset, how often do we factor in equipment integration? And from the onset, you're able to know the cost of the service being offered. It is commensurate to the equipment you're asking to buy in order to issue a service. Secondly, how often do technology advancement? We want this equipment, it has a lifespan for 10 years. But within 10 years, there are different upgrades the manufacturer is allowed to do without necessarily consulting the customer. So if we don't include this from the onset, you realize that equipment has 10 years, but in 5 years, it needs upgrades and becomes obsolete if you're not planned for them. This is the kind of conversations that need to be brought on the table. Then we come to regulatory compliance. Ensure all equipment complies with local and national, international standards. For example, here in Kenya, we have the Kenya Bureau of Standards and Pharmacy and Poisons Board that give out statutory standards, for example, CE and FDA. Given that we don't manufacture equipment in Kenya, we are majorly importers, there are those international standards that we actually rely on that as a basis for you to import an equipment. And beyond that, there's also clinical practice standards that the clinicians say, though this is allowable in this state, but this is how we do this kind of things, and we would like it bare minimum to have this. So involving the clinicians will also help you comply with the regulatory compliance. And this, I'm speaking from experience. When it comes to space and planning, this is all about stakeholders in the procuring process as a biomedical engineer. Collaborate with architects to ensure adequate space and appropriate layout for equipment installation. For example, using the MRI analogy, above the two apart from differing in mode of operation and capacity, a permanent magnet weighing up to 21,000 kilograms, while the superconducting unit weighing less than 10,000. Now you realize all of them have different structural demands. A 21,000 kilogram equipment put in a normal structural building will actually sink it. So this also, in as much as the user may decide which technology they want, involving the architectural and civil people will actually advise what is best in terms of adaptability. Then talk about technology with information system. This is straightforward. However, if not insisted on at the onset of planning, after purchase and successful installation, some designs might force the hospital to procure a whole new equipment at an astronomical cost for only additional parameter that would cost less if incorporated in the earlier specifications. I'll give an example. A particular hospital in the A&E had a patient monitor that was not modular, was fixed, had 3 or 4 parameters. And then when they needed the 5th and 6th parameter, they actually had to go and buy another patient monitor in order to be able to have 2 more parameters. So at the onset of purchase, if this is discussed that though we are not checking these parameters now, but we may want to check them down the lane 1 year or 2, you can buy a modular equipment that can allow hardware upgrade onto the equipment without necessarily buying another one that is not obsolete. So this is actually things that, if not thought of at the onset, will have an issue.
So my
Faith,
hand
you
is
seem to
up.
have a challenge?
My hand is up. Yeah, it's because
Yes.
as clinicians, we feel that we're the experts owning the equipment, and we
Yes.
do not we do not get advice. Huh?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
do not collaborate on the decisions of what is going to be purchased and what the longevity is. And this is very important because the clinical medical director will come and say, I need this, right? You need
Yes.
IT, biomedical, and everybody else in the room to say, really? Do you? Forward. And then, okay, how many
Yes.
patients? How often?
Uh-huh.
We are based in here, in this locality. Do we have that patient population that you're trying to serve?
Yeah.
I've seen people fail because they have set a design of service in an area where the service is not even pertinent.
Yes.
But because they went for a very good conference in Geneva, they said that that's the equipment they're going to buy. And actually, it ends up bleeding the business because you had not thought about it for the long haul. You had thought about it for the one haul. So these are things as medical administrators we need to think about. And I moved myself from a clinician to an administrator now, where I had to take care of money. And we have to think about it. And then when we're thinking about it is that I need my biomedical engineer to tell me, can we even service this equipment here? Does it even work here or no? I am in Migori somewhere. Should this thing even come here or no? If not, there's no solar, there's no this, there's no that. Let's just pull the plug and so on. And these are the kind of sort of strategic decisions that we are actually having organizations think about, because it's not about equipment. It's about impacting populations effectively and being able to run thriving businesses to be able to do that. If you're not running a thriving business, then it's a no. It's a no. I'm being very, very being honest, because yes, I've run and I've actually shut down a hospital, so I can say that in my authority, because I was in the wrong place.
I
But
agree with you,
Renee,
Faye.
your presentation.
Yeah.
No, Renee, your presentation has been very, very, very awesome. We have about 10 more minutes.
Yes.
I wanted Joseph to finish up, but then you have been just so meaningful to this conversation, and I can't wait for more.
Yes. Thank you very much. Your question you're talking about is very important. Of course, the clinician is the source of the needs assessment, right? And at some point, you feel like you own the process. However, you're a part of the stakeholders. Like you talked about IT, you're talking about electronic health records. If I procure for you an equipment that is not DICOM or whatever ready, you will not be able to go paperless. So yes, you hold a key point. However, you need other people to advise how you can benefit and deliver what you intend to do. Like, for example, down the lane, you'll see future expansion. Consider scalability and future expansion. For example, in anesthesia, gas monitoring, also called endotidal carbon dioxide, plus anesthetic gases can be monitored via anesthesia machine itself or a patient monitor. The decision where and how to monitor when can be a key cost-cutting affair or a cost design nightmare. If you decide you want to decide to measure that later, but you bought a solid block in another equipment just because of one parameter that you, if you thought earlier, would be able to do. For example, it is very unlikely that most hospitals have specialized theaters. So you will not have a specialized table. You have one operating room with different operating days, one for gyna, one for surgical, one for something else. So if you can't have specialized rooms, you can have a general operating table that has a capability of adding accessories for neuro, for ENT, for gyna. That is a cost saving at the onset. Come to user training. This is a very important aspect which I've been able to witness in the management equipment service. We more often than not have everybody install an equipment work, but the users, if they're not constantly trained on how to use this equipment one way, then you end up having an issue whereby an engineer comes, does self-test of the equipment, it is working. He or she moves away, it is not working, because the physiological aspect of the patient and the equipment are not marrying. So if you're able to manage the expectation of the clinician versus the delivery of the equipment, then you're able to use the equipment well and effectively. This also contributes to less downtimes and breakdowns, which is a budget cost saving in maintenance, and you have higher throughput of patients and uptime. Like for example, in management equipment service, suppliers are being paid not based on the equipment numbers, patient numbers, but availability of the equipment. 95% and above throughout the year. So if it's lower than 95, you start accruing service failure points, which make you lose money. So the availability of the equipment is important to the clinicians, and so is to the patient. So user training, and I've added down there support staff. Allow me to give an example. Sometimes we are back on a field in service, installing in 2009. One of the hospitals I went and installed a brand new anesthesia machine. 2 weeks later, I was called back that something has blown up. When I went down to investigate, I realized that the way they use the equipment is done well. After use, they have the support staff come and clean the theater. One of them accidentally splashed water into it and did not know. Come Monday morning, they switch it on, it blows up. So when I was called, I had two instructions: either pick up my machine or I replace it. So I found out the default was because the user wasn't trained well on how to clean the environment and spread water. And we're able to actually work through them. So user training is not only the clinicians, but even the caregivers. They actually assist. Then maintenance requirement, develop a maintenance schedule and plan for regular servicing of equipment. This is very important. As you plan for maintenance, make sure that the kind of equipment you're getting in, first of all, needs minimum invasive, so that there's less downtime, and you don't have to interrupt clinical services. Secondly, also the service kits. Equipment come with different kind of service kits. You may have different manufacturers having a plethora of parts to be changed. Another one have minimum parts to be changed, which also affects the cost in the long term. And maintenance actually affects the return on investment of the equipment. And then we have patient safety, of course. This has been discussed in the slide 6, where KEBS and Pharmacy and Poisons Board enforce the statutory regulations, which make sure the equipment is not only safe for the staff, but also for the patients in order for use. So this is very, very important in terms of standards. Energy efficiency is a no-brainer, because if you have an equipment that is working very well, but is heavy on cost of energy, or in such a case of proper disposal, then it's eating up into the running efficiency of the institution. As Faith, you said, you've run one and closed one. Maybe some of these things that you may have liked something or heard something about it, but deep down the wire, you did not see the running costs of the equipment. So this is also very, very key. Then you come to supply and chain logistics. This is very interesting. You run a hospital, you run an institution, you like things, you go to symposium, the biomedical comes, you give specs, and you order, finance pays. But procurement is only notified when they are being shipped or they have arrived at the port. And on the other hand, you have installation schedule and service delivery. But procurement has a whole entire process to do before they hand over the things. So if they're not involved, definitely you've heard people saying procurement is the weakest point. They're always delaying, causing roadblocks, and storage facilities where to take. So they are part of the supply chain in the process.
If you have a procurement
department. At the onset. Yes, they are. Because if you don't include them,
I
do
said
the whole
if you have a procurement department, because I've dealt with HSMEs where the CEO was procurement, was dietary, was HR. Huh? Yeah,
Yes.
based
Yes.
in Homer Bay, and he was very proud of that. He changed that after a while. But then, if you
Yes.
have a procurement department, because what we are seeing with HSMEs, and remember, we're not dealing with Aga Khan Nairobi Hospital, Mpisha. We're
Yes.
dealing with
Yes.
everybody else, right? And everybody else are smaller
Correct.
than, and then they don't have
Yes.
that infrastructure. And as AMF, that's
Correct.
the infrastructure we're trying to actually build, to say, do you have this? Do you have that? And even if you don't have this, then contract them, outsource them, and so on
Yes.
and so forth. If you don't have IT, if you don't have biomedical or whatever, outsource them, but have them inside this space to assist you in making decisions, because a lot of HSMEs do not have that cohesive infrastructure. It is what it is.
That is very important. You may not have them. You may
But
not have them, as you say, but the truth is, involve them. Even if it's contracted, involve them. And then when it comes to their part to play, they fit in well. So I agree with you 100%. And then we have infection control. This is very personal to me because I've had operating tables being washed. We have blood flowing, and in modern places where you find that infection control, they have antibacterial floors and what, so there's no need of splashing. But a rural setup, you have to wash and scrub and splash. So if you have water ingress or fluid ingress have to be higher so that it's sustainable at that level. You can't go to Homa Bay or Suba and tell that person in a maternity theater, blood has spilled, don't splash, jig, or don't do what. They have to do that. So the equipment has to suit the environment in which it has to work. That is technically what this talks about. And then we got clinical feedback. Very important. We buy equipment, we have them in the market, but how they affect the user is important to the distributor and the manufacturer so that it uses them well. Some equipment could have been designed well in a different market, like we are only consumers. It comes down to us. You find, like, for example, in theater, the anesthetist is the one who raises the bed and puts it down because he or she has freer hands. I have seen an anesthesia machine being broken down by a bed because he was busy getting instructions from the surgeon, but he forgot about his anesthesia machine, which is next to the bed. So some parts which were hanging out were able to give feedback to the manufacturer, and they changed the design to suit. So the clinicians are actually the orators of the design, and then the manufacturers come in. So that relationship is very important from clinical feedback. You don't just tell them, this is good, it works here, and you have to take it as it is. You'll have challenges. Then we have emergency backup. This I'll just rush very quickly. I was involved in a project that had 20 MRIs and 37 CT scans. Power is an issue in the third world country, and you can do nothing about it apart from having UPSs and generators that kick in the right environment. That is enough about that. Then storage equipment. We have, for example, you have one anesthesia machine and you have a backup one properly, or bring it up for use in case of a need. And then we have integration with, for you to go paperless and have information to be useful at your disposal. Then the equipment must be ready. So when you're ready to do that, the infrastructure, they're able to be absorbed. Installation and maintenance warranty. This is very important. Warranty is not necessarily service. People confuse warranty for service. However, manufacturers and distributors can pack service into warranty at the onset. Most of the times we buy equipment and say it has 12 months warranty. We think it has service. When you buy a car, they tell you it has warranty for maybe 100,000 kilometers or 6 months, whichever comes first. But after 5,000, the equipment needs service. That is not for free. So these things need to be discussed at the onset. The manufacturer or distributor is
I'm
able to
going
give you a
let
better.
my colleague Joe actually jump on that, because we actually, when we're doing our training, we go on that in terms of
Yes.
our clients make the vendor it's like the vendor is superior,
Yes.
and it's like no, you're the client, you're buying a service, and
Yes.
your insurance and all of you're the one who's responsible for that, and so on and so forth. So these things about warranties, where they're saying only
Yes.
1 year warranty, how can I have 1 year warranty for an MRI? No. These are it should be 7 years. How can I have 1 year? First of
Yes.
all, I've had to have to do my infrastructure and change it all around, for this piece of equipment to come in, and then we
Correct.
can start now seeing how it works. But
Correct.
our clients don't see their authority with the vendor around warranty.
Yes.
And Joe,
Yes.
please come in.
No, it's the same thing. I mean, because when I ran hospitals in the US, our warranty started off at 18 months. And that was demanded by the client. The manufacturer did not have a choice because the client has a choice. They have 10 different manufacturers they can go through. So if you're not willing to do it, the Samsung or the GE or the Philips or somebody down the street will. So the warranty is something that's often just taken at face value because the client says, hey, that's what the company said. They're only giving me 3 months. So I'll take 3 months, not realizing that with the purchase comes power. With the purchase comes power. But what we want to do, Faith, and Renee, thank you so much. We only have 5 minutes left on this. What I would love to be able to do is open it up to any questions that have not been posed on the chat. We can actually take live questions and have them directed at Renee, at Faith, and anybody else, Leon, anybody else on this call. So feel free to either put it on the chat or voice it, and we'll make sure it gets answered in this last 5 minutes.
Cynthia,
Thank
from
you.
KHF's standpoint, can the questions be directed to KHF? And then as a team, we can direct them, because I think the conversations have been really, really rich. I don't think we had enough of time. KHF thought that 1.5 hours was too long. I say no. I think we had a very, very rich conversation. But if the conversations, Lisa, Martin, Randy, can you just send where questions can go to you? Because we also have Anthony here from Mindray, and also who probably would be very good to engage with some of our clients as well. So can you just send, where questions can go to centralized, and then we can address them from a central point. There are financial questions there. I don't know if Madenge is on the line, but then we can also address those as well. Any closing remarks from Renee and then from Joe?
Thank you very much. I would like to say it has been a very engaging topic, and just like you've seen, as Joe had said, medical equipment is the genesis, is the backbone of what is happening, and because of technology, things keep changing pretty fast. And it is important that at the onset of purchase, whether it's a large institution or small one, it has a big financial burden along the line if it's not discussed early. Just allow me to talk about a little bit before Mamati comes in terms of warranty installation. As Joe said, in the US, it's 18 months standard, take it or leave it. What you also don't know is you can actually dictate to have, at a smaller fee, an extended warranty. Like, for example, we had one in Kenya under MES. We had a extended warranty for 7 years. Nobody talks about it, but we had an extended warranty for 7 good years. What that meant is stability of supply of spare parts, and the manufacturer is able to keep those spare parts for at least the duration of the lifespan of the equipment. Even if they revise the equipment and change the model to a superior one or something, spare parts of the equipment you bought 7 years down the lane will still be available. So
Was that with
that's a very
GE?
eye-opening.
Was that GE?
In the managed equipment
And
service, there
Philips.
was GE, there was Philips, there was Mindray, and they actually had to do that because they had a contract for 7 years. So they had to have an extended warranty in order to be able to service this equipment
You see,
while
now
they're
you're
still
telling
in
people
action.
things, but it was more public sector, not private, isn't it?
Now, that in fact, in private is more difficult to because it looks like we take things we are in private, they have a bigger negotiation power. I've been involved in private hospitals whereby they are good negotiators in terms of warranty and service.
Actually, if this is Mazenge, I've been on
So
the
yeah, it's
call.
good knowledge to know.
Yeah, Rene is right. Even in the private sector, it's just a question of whether you have got the appetite to spend a little bit more cash. And I can see about some of the
Madenge
distributors,
is coming
you can
here
actually buy
humbly, but he was finance
extended
director for
warranty.
Avenue. So, yeah, and CEO for Meridian. So, yeah, he's coming from
Yeah, so
Go
guys, you
ahead.
can buy extended warranty. Yes, I was
Yeah.
just confirming that.
Thank you.
Okay. No, and those are the nuggets that a lot of our HSMEs are not aware of and are being taken advantage of because we are buying expensive equipment, yeah? But then we don't know that we can actually negotiate to maintain this equipment. And that's where we go wrong as well. And this is actually the purpose of this negotiation, actually, or of this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important also to note that a strong distributor plays, like you mentioned, Mindray, Crown, and what. There are lines which each of them play and very well. The manufacturer will come in with good product. The distributor will come in with the support because it's unlikely that you'll have Mindray coming to institution every day to repair, support, or train. But they're partnering distributor who understands the needs assessment on the ground, and most likely the locals come very important in sharing this information for the longevity of the relationship.
Good point. Very good point. The role of the distributor. Very good point. Yeah. Joe?
Not much to add, Faith. I think we've had a rich conversation. We will probably have a part 2 of this at some point, but we'll send out notices in advance so that we can finish the future proofing of medical equipment procurement. Thank you, everyone. And thanks to all my colleagues and clients from all over the world, Uganda, Pakistan, Nigeria.
Wow.
Thank you for showing up. And you
Rwanda,
guys,
Nigeria, yeah.
Yeah, you guys have been sending me texts. You guys probably were on the Nigeria folks were probably on the Dr. Ola Brown did a webinar for impact investment in medical equipment in hospitals. So thank you guys. If any of you guys are from that, I appreciate you.
If there are any topics or insights that you've picked from this conversation that you think need to be addressed based on our health advisory and our technical sort of leadership team, please share with Kenya Healthcare Federation so that we can bring that back to you. But we are very, very appreciative as well. For me is to say thank you to the Kenya Healthcare Federation team. Once again, Dr. Tim Deori, Charity, Lisa, Martin, Renee, Randy, for all the wonderful work that you always do. We are very, very appreciative. To Bas Joe, that's my team, and Madenge, that's my core team, just for being supportive and just being just wonderful in what they do. We are so appreciative for all of you who have joined. We have 34 people on the line still. So it means that I think this was a success. So thank you for everything. If there's anything I've left out, I'll leave Joe to say.
No, that's about it, Faith. I think you're good.
Okay, good. Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you again for
Take
having me.
care.
Thanks.